It's difficult to assess with 100% certainty the extent to which social media and certain creative trends can influence the younger generation. Tragedies like the one about to be described often spark wide-ranging discussions in society, but whether this will actually help prevent violent crimes in real life or merely contribute to someone's popularity built on the blood of innocent people remains an open question. The Miller family lived in the small town of Mannheim, located in Pennsylvania, USA. Mannheim has a population of about 5,000 people. Many American families prefer such cozy, quiet provincial towns for starting a family and raising children away from the hustle and bustle of big cities. Usually, in such places, everyone knows each other, and the crime rate remains low. However, as practice shows, expectations are not always met, and even the most peaceful towns can find themselves in the national spotlight due to high-profile crimes. Mark and Mary Miller were known as a calm and loving couple who actively participated in the social life of Mannheim. They had a strong desire to have children and create a large family, but these dreams were not destined to come true. When developmental abnormalities were diagnosed in their firstborn during late pregnancy, Mary did not dare to terminate the pregnancy. The birth of their eldest daughter, Helen, was a real test for the couple. And 5 years later, on May 14, 2007, another girl was born into the family, whom they named Claire. The younger child became the true life of the party, particularly because she could help care for her older sister, who had been diagnosed with cerebral palsy since early childhood. Due to her condition, Helen constantly required special care and increased attention from all family members. Even at the age of 19, the Millers' eldest daughter was confined to a wheelchair and could not enjoy even the simplest pleasures of life or take care of herself independently. The girl was unable to eat, dress, or fully communicate with others. She barely spoke. However, Helen still interacted with other people through nonverbal communication, for example, by nodding her head to indicate agreement or disagreement. Despite everything, the parents sincerely loved both daughters, including Helen, and made every effort to ensure that she could integrate into society and live as full a life as possible. The girl attended a specialized center located in a neighboring town, where her father took her for classes every Monday. There, Helen spent weekdays under the supervision of specially trained staff, interacting with other people and teenagers. And every Friday, Mark would pick up his elder daughter to take her home so that she could spend the weekend with the family. The younger daughter, Claire, was educated at the local school, where she was an excellent student known for her academic success. She even held the position of class president. Teachers respected and valued Claire for her responsibility and care for others. These qualities were probably instilled in the girl from an early age when the need arose to help and support her older sister, Helen. The purposeful Claire dreamed of getting a higher education, finding a prestigious job, and starting to build a successful career. Back in 2020, thanks to her diligent studies, she managed to get a scholarship to enter college. Both at school and at home, Claire devoted the lion's share of her time to studying. However, of course, she also had more down-to-earth interests typical for her age. As soon as the social network TikTok appeared, Claire immediately created an account there. The girl was captivated by this entertaining environment with interesting videos that helped to escape from the difficult everyday life of a teenager. After starting a TikTok page, the Millers' younger daughter began filming short videos, repeating popular dance moves in them, which eventually allowed her to gain over 22,000 subscribers. However, this did not prevent Claire from actively participating in family life. She continued to help her mother and was involved in caring for Helen when she came home for the weekends. From the outside, the girl's daily life seemed quite normal, but in reality, she faced a number of difficulties. It later became known that Claire had problems communicating with her peers. Despite her responsibility, the girl was quite reserved, spoke little with anyone, and was extremely reluctant to share her own problems with others. At the same time, it seemed as if she put the needs of others above her own. Claire faced bullying on the internet, but fortunately, the situation was brought under control. When it was all over, the girl confessed to her parents that she doubted her own gender identity and felt that being female caused her discomfort. The schoolgirl claimed that she actually wanted to be born a boy. At first, this was perceived as a teenage whim, but soon it became clear that Claire needed help. Against this background, the parents began to visit a psychotherapist together with their younger daughter. After several sessions, the girl's condition improved markedly, which she repeatedly mentioned herself. From then on, Claire never returned to this topic. The specialist concluded that it was just a difficult teenage period and the girl needed increased attention. And then the 2020 pandemic hit. A lockdown was introduced, during which everyone had to stay at home in isolation. Claire did not communicate with anyone except family members, and it became impossible to visit a psychotherapist. It is possible that these circumstances significantly contributed to the subsequent bloody events. On February 22, 2021, a call from a teenage girl came to the 911 emergency rescue service line in the city of Mannheim. Around 3 o'clock in the morning, she called, screaming and crying into the receiver. When the dispatcher managed to make out her words, it turned out that the young caller was confessing to killing her own sister during a quarrel. Several police officers were immediately dispatched to the scene. When law enforcement officers arrived at the Miller family's home, they were immediately met by 14-year-old Claire, whose clothes were stained with blood. The girl waved her hand towards the house and again told the police that she had killed her older sister, Helen, with a knife. According to her, the body was in the bedroom on Helen's bed. Claire's bloodied hands and clothes, which she had apparently tried to clean with snow, confirmed her words. The officers noticed several bloody footprints in the snow near the porch. The officers entered the house and immediately woke up Claire's parents, who were peacefully sleeping in their bedroom, not even suspecting what had happened. Since Claire did not wake them up herself and did not tell them about the incident, Mark and Mary were shocked and frightened when they woke up. At first, they thought that some intruder had broken into the house while everyone was sleeping, but soon the couple was in for something much more sinister. Making their way through the unlit corridors with weapons at the ready, the police officers initially did not believe Claire's words themselves. They assumed that a criminal who had attacked the sisters could be hiding in the house. But in Helen's room, a different sight awaited them. The girl was lying on the bed in a pool of blood, her face covered with a pillow. When the pillow was removed, Helen's mutilated body was revealed, with no signs of life. The victim had suffered numerous stab wounds, mostly in the neck and upper chest area. Claire had even left the murder weapon, a knife stuck in her sister's throat, simply covering the terrible scene with a pillow. The girl explained this by saying that she could not look at the result of what had been done to her older sister. Helen's hands were raised to her head, her entire clothing and bedding soaked with blood. The police officers at the scene of the tragedy tried to resuscitate the Miller's elder daughter while waiting for the medics to arrive. Unfortunately, all attempts proved futile. Helen had suffered several fatal wounds and quickly bled out, so by the time law enforcement arrived, she was already showing no signs of life. The doctors who later arrived merely pronounced the girl dead. No traces of the presence of outsiders were found at the crime scene. Judging by the position of the deceased's body, she had tried to resist the killer, but due to her limited physical abilities, she could not cope with him. The girl's parents, who had just woken up, could not at all comprehend what was happening. Upon seeing their elder daughter's body, they fell into despair. The mother burst into tears, not understanding how the younger sister could have raised her hand against the elder. According to Claire, a conflict arose between the sisters, which escalated into a fight. The younger sister was forced to defend herself and, in the process of self-defense, accidentally went too far, which led to Helen's death. However, the parents did not believe this version of events from the very beginning. The daughters had never quarreled with each other before. Claire had always helped her older sister and supported her. No one could have imagined that it would end so bloody. Moreover, Helen's physical condition simply would not have allowed her to get into a fight and attack Claire, even if she had wanted to. And the older daughter had no weapons. All this made it necessary to question Claire's claim that the large kitchen knife had accidentally ended up in her hands. Such explanations sounded absurd, to say the least. Despite everything, some circumstances spoke in favor of Claire's version. A cold-blooded killer who is not tormented by remorse for what he has done is unlikely to cover the victim's face with any object. This can be regarded as a subconscious desire to distance oneself from the crime committed. The fact that a pillow was found on Helen's head indicated that the killer knew her personally and was shocked by what had been done. This detail confirmed the existence of an emotional and psychological connection between the victim and the perpetrator. According to a preliminary reconstruction of events, on the evening of that fateful Sunday, all family members went to their rooms to go to bed. It is still unknown how long Claire had been hatching a plan to kill her sister, or whether she had planned it at all. The teenage girl went to the kitchen, where she took one of the knives, and then inflicted fatal wounds on Helen. After that, she covered her sister's face with a pillow and called 911 emergency services. The motives for the attack remained a mystery, and Claire herself could not give a clear answer to this question. After the girl was brought breakfast from a fast food restaurant during the interrogation, she reacted quite strangely. "Oh, McDonald's. If I had known that I would get McDonald's for this, I would have killed someone earlier." These words sounded eerie and shocked the police officers present. And the very call that Claire made to 911 emergency services also raised questions. It seems that under the impression of the Halloween films, where Michael Myers kills his sister, the teenage girl said during a conversation with the operator, "I am Michael Myers, I killed my sister." By the way, the mentioned movie character also used a large kitchen knife as a murder weapon. Everything indicated that Claire was in a state of affect. Shortly after the incident, the girls sent text messages to several of her acquaintances with the following content: "I'm so sorry, guys, I just killed my sister." Local TV channels released reports about the tragedy that occurred in the Miller family's house, and this news stunned the entire town community. During this period, detectives were already actively working on any leads that could shed light on a possible motive for the crime. However, in this case, the investigation was complicated by a number of factors: the young age of the suspect, the condition of the victim, and the family ties between them. Helen's murder turned out to be a spontaneous, unprovoked outburst of aggression. At the same time, Claire was not a problematic teenager. She grew up in a well-to-do family, had no bad habits, had not previously shown a propensity for violence, and had never come to the attention of law enforcement. Everyone who knew the girl well was shocked and could not believe that Helen had died at the hands of her own younger sister. Investigators paid considerable attention to Claire's social media page and her activity on TikTok. Perhaps they hoped to find at least some clues there that could shed light on the motives for this murder. At the time of the incident, the 14-year-old schoolgirl had over 22,000 subscribers. She had gained considerable popularity thanks to numerous videos on the topic of anime and other trendy movements of that time, such as dance challenges and short thematic videos. After information about the murder hit the news, interest in Claire's social media account skyrocketed. Within a few days after the arrest, the schoolgirl killer's page attracted so much attention that the number of her subscribers increased to 30,000. All this further fueled the discussions around the tragedy. And at the beginning of the investigation, the worst fears of the police were confirmed: Claire had indeed attacked her sister without any outside help. Despite this, the teenager refused to plead guilty to the intentional murder of Helen, citing mental health problems. However, few people believed this. Even when Claire began to show signs of mental disorders, many believed that she was simply faking it. Detectives carefully studied the girl's social media pages and found several disturbing videos posted a few days before the crime. Usually cheerful and carefree videos were replaced by depressing ones, filled with anxiety and sadness. In particular, in one of them, Claire allegedly wanted to complain about her father because of the misunderstanding that he and the older generation in general showed regarding her internet activity. However, not everyone regarded this as a call for help from a teenager who found herself in a difficult life situation. Some considered these videos to be ordinary insignificant manifestations of youthful maximalism, which cannot be considered as strong evidence of the presence of serious problems. With the exception of the last few posts, most of the content on Claire's page consisted of completely innocent videos. Some time after the crime, amid heightened interest in the killer's account, TikTok officially blocked the girl's page. This happened after her latest dubious video gained millions of views. The reasons for this decision were not disclosed, but support service representatives noted that they had found violations of community principles that prohibit the promotion of violence and calls for it. This step caused a new wave of discussions. Many users believed that the blocking of Claire's account was related to the calls for violence that she demonstrated with the help of a bloodied toy. Others insisted that the materials published by the girl in no way called for cruelty. Some managed to download and save the schoolgirl's videos even before her page was blocked. The videos with the bloodied latex glove and the stuffed giraffe thrown into the snow caused the greatest resonance. Users who actively followed these publications suggested that the videos were filmed after Claire had dealt with her older sister. However, it was not possible to reliably establish the time and origin of these videos. It was especially difficult for the girl's parents, who lost both daughters in an instant. One died at the hands of the other, and the second faced a long imprisonment for the murder of her sister. The mother insisted that she loved both girls and was convinced that Claire did not want to commit such a terrible act. The parents insisted that the cause of the tragedy was the younger daughter's mental deviations. They had already lost Helen and did not want to lose Claire as well. However, not everyone sympathized with the Millers and supported them. The girl's mother and father were bombarded with negative comments and messages on social media. At first, offensive comments began to massively appear under various posts about the tragedy. Some even mocked what had happened and expressed support for the killer. All this deeply hurt the parents. Someone even started sending out downloaded videos with the assumption that Claire had first stained her clothes with her sister's blood and only then made these publications. Numerous disputes flared up around the incident, especially after videos from the girl's deleted account began to reappear on the platform. Since the videos did not contain overt scenes of cruelty or direct calls for violence, the site administration saw no reason to block them. All this attracted the attention of Claire's subscribers and acquaintances, who entered into heated discussions in the comments. Some claimed that the mentioned videos had never been on the girl's page, and the people who published them are simply trying to gain popularity on the wave of a terrible crime. Others suggested that Claire had actually reposted these videos from some other girl's page. Many did not see any connection between the videos with blood and Helen's death at all. Against the backdrop of the stunning resonance caused by this story, law enforcement officers had to react to posts on social networks. Claire's parents were even threatened on the internet, but they steadfastly withstood this pressure. As for the facts, the police noted that when they arrived at the call, the girl met them on the street, and there were no bloodied latex gloves on her hands. The law enforcement officers did not notice the stuffed giraffe anywhere either. Claire had nothing in her hands at all, she only tried to wash the blood off her palms with snow. But as soon as the girl was arrested on charges of murdering her sister, questions of a different nature arose. According to the legislation of the state of Pennsylvania, all those accused of murder are tried as adult criminals. Despite her 14 years of age, Claire faced extremely severe punishments. From the very beginning, such a decision seemed rather controversial. The parents, who had just lost their elder daughter, did not want to lose their younger one forever as well. They insisted that the cause of her act could have been Claire's unstable mental state and demanded that more attention be paid to assessing the girl's psychological health. The lawyer hired by the girl's relatives tried to focus on this from the very beginning of the process. Claire's defense sought to achieve a review of the decision to bring her to justice as an adult criminal and to transfer the case to the jurisdiction of juvenile justice. The lawyer was convinced that detention in a specialized institution for juvenile offenders could provide the girl with much more opportunities for rehabilitation, counseling, and receiving necessary psychiatric care. The defense strategy was based on proving Claire's insanity. To this end, several independent examinations were conducted, which confirmed that the schoolgirl had a whole range of mental disorders, including rather serious ones. 2 psychiatrists claimed that on that fatal night, the girl had a psychotic attack. At first, she allegedly tried to cut her own throat, and then attacked some vision with a knife. Claire stopped her actions only when she realized that it was not a hallucination next to her, but her own sister, who had already managed to bleed out. The frightened girl covered Helen with a pillow and then called the rescuers. One of the experts emphasized that 14-year-old Claire was still a child with a not fully developed psyche, and called on the court to take this into account. However, attempts at defense were hindered by a number of factors, among which the legislation of the state of Pennsylvania turned out to be the most significant. According to it, if Claire was found guilty and sentenced as an adult criminal, the girl could face life imprisonment or even the death penalty. Such a prospect caused outrage not only from Claire's loved ones, but also among the general public. Police officers who arrived at the scene at the Miller's house also testified in court. They noted that although Claire, covered in blood, cried from time to time, she did not resort to hysterics and generally behaved quite adequately. In their opinion, the girl did not give the impression of being insane. Concerned citizens again raised the painful issue of the death penalty in the United States. People were outraged by the absurdity of the situation when serial killers can wait decades for the execution of the sentence and eventually die in prison of natural causes, having exhausted all possibilities for appeals and challenges in each episode. Meanwhile, a 14-year-old schoolgirl faced the death penalty for just one crime, and there was a high probability that the sentence would be carried out rather quickly, since there was not much to review. Some believed that responsibility for what had been done should be borne not only by Claire, but also by her parents. After all, it was known that they encouraged their younger daughter in every possible way to help her older sister and take care of her. Sometimes the girl even had to accompany Helen to doctor's appointments. Now the public doubted that there was a warm relationship between the sisters. People assumed that Claire was actually given full responsibility for looking after Helen. Such circumstances could cause emotional stress and provoke the accumulation of anger and hatred towards the helpless sister, which had been ripening in the soul of the young girl for years. Perhaps, due to her age or the indifference of her parents, Claire simply could not cope with this burden, which led to psychological problems. Against the background of this tragedy, the Millers were hit by another flurry of criticism. In addition to experiencing a terrible loss, the couple now had to defend themselves against public condemnation as well. However, the family also found supporters. Everyone who knew this family well spoke about Mark and Mary exclusively in a positive way, describing them as loving parents who paid equal attention to both daughters. And the cases when Claire helped her sister were not regular and were perceived more as an element of proper upbringing than as the exploitation of a child. Experts in the field of psychiatry showed an extraordinary interest in the case. Statistics show that it is people with disabilities and special needs who most often suffer at the hands of relatives or guardians. Could Helen's plight really have pushed Claire to the idea that her sister was an unbearable burden to be rid of? Or perhaps the girl perceived her act as a kind of mercy killing, an opportunity to free a loved one from suffering? Such distortions in the perception of reality are often observed in people who have been in close contact with a person who is unable to take care of themselves for a long time. Some psychiatrists also noticed other alarming signals in Claire's behavior. It is quite likely that the girl was jealous of Helen towards her parents, because due to her condition, the older sister required much more attention from all family members. And this is exactly what Claire herself lacked, especially given her transitional age. A scrupulous analysis of the girl's TikTok posts showed that she was not as innocent as some thought. In order to better understand the motives of the young killer, psychiatrists carefully studied the content that she posted on the network shortly before the account was deleted. Fortunately, most of the posts were saved, because the schoolgirl's last posts became viral. One of Claire's final videos, dedicated to her father, caused considerable surprise. It seems that the girls suffered from a lack of understanding on the part of the older generation. The video felt clear discontent, apparently caused by the father's ambiguous reaction to his daughter's passion for Japanese culture and anime. Many of Claire's posts contained references to violent anime and video games. At least one post was a direct link to a Japanese game, the plot of which is that some creature forces a group of high school students to kill each other. There were also screenshots from a Korean web comic about a young man with mental disorders who was bullied by a relative and later in the army. Claire repeatedly mentioned manga characters whose names were associated with death. However, the real extent of the girl's fascination with such content and the depth of its influence on her psyche remained a mystery, after the page was deleted, the possibilities for analysis were, unfortunately, lost. But despite this, it was possible to compile a fairly detailed portrait of Claire, a girl who, on the one hand, was a smart, creative excellent student, and on the other, suffered from psychological problems and had a tendency to cruelty. Her interest in brutal games and comics with a high level of violence looked at least alarming and could well have pushed her to violence against her sister. Assumptions about Claire's insanity were indirectly confirmed by detectives as well. Firstly, when the girl called the rescue service, the dispatcher noted obvious signs of her inadequate condition. And secondly, this version was supported by Claire's obsession with films about Michael Myers and other oddities. After the official charge of premeditated murder was brought, the teenager was taken into custody without the right to bail. Given that the girl was considered particularly dangerous, there was a high risk of repeated attack. In addition, due to Claire's unstable mental state, increased attention was paid to her in prison. There was a high probability that she would try to take her own life. Moreover, during conversations with investigators, the girl herself admitted to having such thoughts. The shocking events found the greatest response in Claire's hometown. The girl's classmates and students of parallel classes took what happened extremely hard. To help the children cope with their experiences after the tragedy, a team of psychologists was invited to the school. The principal of the educational institution where Claire was finishing 9th grade was forced to make an official statement. Most of the residents of Mannheim just wanted to leave this creepy story in the past as soon as possible. Meanwhile, the public was eagerly awaiting the preliminary hearing in the case of the juvenile offender. On April 16, 2021, Claire Miller appeared before the Lancaster County Court. However, the girl was not present in the courtroom in person. Instead, a video broadcast was organized from the prison in Muncie, where she was currently being held. Claire's lawyer announced that his client had decided not to participate in the preliminary hearing, exercising her legal right. This simplified a number of procedural points and allowed to avoid lengthy debates. The prosecutor did not have to convince the court of the presence of sufficient evidence to bring charges against Claire. The preliminary hearing in the case was scheduled for May 14, 2021, but the defendant refused to take part in it and did not admit her guilt. It was after this stage that the lawyer petitioned to transfer the case from the adult court to the juvenile justice system, but was refused. In addition, the defense announced its intention to insist on the insanity of the client. The delay in the process due to obvious difficulties only intensified the fears of Claire's parents that the system would deprive them of their second child as well. However, the prosecution quickly abandoned the demand to apply the highest measure of punishment to the girl. But despite this, the risk of life imprisonment remained quite high. Eventually, on March 10, 2023, Claire Miller pleaded guilty to third-degree murder. This happened as part of a deal with the prosecution. According to the results of numerous psychiatric examinations, the girl was recognized as mentally ill, but sane. This arrangement gave the lawyers some room for maneuver and the opportunity to circumvent some of the restrictions provided for by law. However, Claire still could not avoid responsibility. The court sentenced her to 40 years in prison. At the same time, the girl retained the right to parole, which she can receive in 12.5 years. Currently, the convict is serving her sentence. Relatives hope that behind bars, Claire will receive the necessary help, undergo a rehabilitation course, and in 12.5 years she will be able to get out on parole. Please write your thoughts and reactions in the comments below. For those who are new here, subscribing is the best way to stay updated on future content. Also give a like please. Take care of yourself and your loved ones. Thank you for your support during this difficult time. Until next time, friends.